At this time, I'd like to introduce Senator Jerry Sonnenberg. Senator Sonnenberg was elected to the Jerry was elected to the House of Representatives in 2006 and served 8 years. He was then elected as a Colorado Senator for District 1. Senator Sonnenberg was born and raised in Sterling, Colorado. Please welcome Senator Sonnenberg to the podium.
Thank you, Leland. It is so good to be here, and unfortunately, I'm going to go over a whole bunch of the ballot amendments on the ballot, except for one, because I see my good friend in the front row, and I'm going to leave the last one for him to do. It's good to see Senator Brophy there in the front row. So I am going to start and go down the list. I am going to try and do this and present you arguments on both sides, and then I'm going to tell you how I'm going to vote and why I'm going to vote that way. You can take it for what it's worth. Many of you may look at that and go, Sonnenberg's voting yes, I'm a no. There are other people at the legislature that I can tell you do that. With that said, I'll start with Amendment T. Amendment T is a legislative referred constitutional amendment. It's fairly simple, actually. It would remove an exception to the prohibition of slavery that allows individuals to be held in involuntary servitude if convicted of a crime. Right now, as you know, slavery is illegal in the United States. The Constitution prohibits slavery and involuntary servitude. There is an exception in the Colorado Constitution for inmates. That is still in the Colorado Constitution. The legislature decided that it probably was inappropriate to leave that in there, and in our attempt to try and clean up some of those things, we brought this forward. The only downside I see from this and the conversations we had in the legislature, there could be some lawsuits with regard to prisoners on work programs within the prison. As you know, we have a number with the Sterling Correctional Facility. We have people to go out and clean highways and do other work projects, learn a trade or do something like that within the prison that may get paid $1 an hour or something like that as part of their term in the prison. We anticipate there could be lawsuits, although the judges have said before that that is not slavery, but we would anticipate we may have to spend a little money to defend that position, to remove that slavery portion from the Constitution. I am voting for Amendment T. I think it makes sense to do the right thing and actually eliminate slavery out of any type of slavery out of our Constitution. Next one is Amendment U. Amendment U deals with property tax exemption for possessory interests of value of $6,000 or less. For those of you who don't know, a possessory interest is when you have interest or lease property from government. Now, those in agriculture understand this. When we have state school board sections of land throughout the state, and a farmer rents 80 acres of that or a quarter of that, whatever that may be, there is a law on the books, which actually I disagree with, but it's on the books, that you have to pay a tax for possessing that lease. For agriculture in Colorado, the average tax is less than $10. So what we are finding out is your county clerks and your county assessors and your county treasurers have gone, it costs us more to collect that tax than it's worth. Can we exempt those levels where it doesn't make sense for us to spend the money to collect that tax? The downside to that is the opposition will tell you that it creates an unfair advantage to businesses that utilize state assets for a gain. When it comes right down to it, I'm voting yes on this because if that $10 that I'm paying in a possessory interest tax is going to make or break me and my competitor in the private sector, it doesn't seem reasonable to me. It seems reasonable to me to not spend more money to collect the tax than the tax itself. That's why I'm supporting Amendment U. Now, we've talked about 69. I'm going to jump right to Amendment 70. Amendment 70 increases the minimum wage to $9.30 per hour, with an annual increase of 90 cents each January 1st until it reaches $12 per hour. This minimum wage, let me put it in perspective for you. When you have a minimum wage, when a business pays a minimum wage, and you increase the amount that business has to pay for that minimum wage, no matter what business that is, how are they going to recoup that? Now, they'll either go out of business because it takes away and they can't make enough money to pay their bills, or they will raise the price of their products. So the grocery store here, the convenience store, those high school kids that get the summer jobs for minimum wage may not have that opportunity any longer with an increase in the minimum wage, because businesses will choose to make business decisions based on what they can and cannot do as far as the bottom line. If the bottom line is going to lose money and they have to eliminate one employee because they had to raise the minimum wage on other employees, that's one less person that's going to work. The other side of that is when that company raises its prices to cover the minimum wage, then you're right back where the minimum wage was, because your value of being able to buy those products has gone down. I think what you will see and what we have anticipated and why the business community is opposed to this is because it'll cost businesses in rural Colorado, especially where we have a lower threshold for us and the wages we earn. I would tell you that there is only one winner, I would argue, when we raise the minimum wage, and that's government, because they will collect more taxes on payroll and income that is generated. I will be a no on the increase in minimum wage for those reasons. 71, I'm going to leave for Senator Brophy. 72 is the cigarette tax. Turn that to my page. Well, I got pages in case Greg didn't show up that I was going to say on 70, so I have to turn all those. 72 is a tobacco tax. Taxes on tobacco products seeks to impose an additional tax of $1.75 per pack of cigarettes and 22% of the list price on other tobacco products. The funds raised are to be appropriated for a number of different education, prevention, and medical research. The interesting part of this one is this, if you want to know where it comes from, it's an attempt to drive down tobacco use. If you raise taxes high enough, there are people that are going to use a product less that is taxed more. Now, will that get us to the point that they want to get? How many of those people will indeed quit smoking? The vast majority of smokers in Colorado, and quite frankly in the country, are lower income. Lower income or fixed income. These are the same people that you see around that buy cigarettes, and if they don't have enough money in their wallet at the grocery store when they buy the cigarettes and they buy food, they'll put the food back to keep the cigarettes. One of the things that also concerns me about this initiative is it puts in our Constitution that we will spend a certain percentage of this tax on a number of different programs. And if those programs are deemed, if we figure out that those programs do not work, are ineffective, or they serve their purpose and they're no longer needed, that money will still go to those programs unless we pass another constitutional amendment to change that. So if you want a job for life, be in one of those programs that'll be funded if this passes, because they will never take the money away. The other side of this, or another thing that concerns me about the tobacco tax is this really government's role? Is this what government was meant to do? Was social engineering on what I should and should not do with my body government? Is that government's responsibility? Well, many of you have heard me speak time and time again, and I'm one of those guys that I'm for less government, and government should stay out of our decisions and let us make bad decisions on our own. And I make plenty of those on my own. I think government should allow me to continue to make those and my neighbors to make those. That's why I am voting no also on Amendment 72. Now, Amendment 106, we talked about Amendment 107. 107 is the presidential primary elections. Seeks to replace Colorado's presidential nomination caucuses with primary elections. Each party's primary election would be open to voters affiliated with that party and unaffiliated voters, but not voters affiliated with another party. What that means is that you would have a primary, and if you are unaffiliated, you could vote in either primary. If you are part of a minor party, such as the Libertarian Party, the American Constitution Party, the Green Party, those parties, you don't have that option. You don't get a play. You're not part of that major party system. One of the other concerns that I might have on this is the governor sets the date. There could be partisan politics played. For example, if you look after a 4-year term of a presidential candidate, when one party knows who their candidate is going to be, if I'm governor and I want to hurt that other party's chances in a primary, I will set the date accordingly so Colorado doesn't matter. That's a concern of mine as well. Funding, local counties will pay for this election. If they cannot afford it, the state will have to come up with money to try and cover those county costs. And understand that there is potential, depending on your county's fiscal year, that county could have 2 major elections to fund in the same year. So you may have a primary and the general election in that same year funded by that county. It also has in there that it binds all the delegates. So whatever the primary is, when you send your delegates to the National Convention, your delegates are bound to whoever won a winner-take-all. So if the primary was a 51-49, the 51 gets all of Colorado votes. Currently, through our assembly process, you elect delegates, and you may elect delegates based on whatever reason, and there's a number of delegates. They may be split on how they vote at the National Convention in both parties. This would bind them, and all votes would be cast, so it really wouldn't matter who your delegates were, quite frankly. Another concern is unaffiliates. The unaffiliated would receive a combined ballot. So it would be a ballot where the Democrats are distinctly separate from the Republicans, but it could cause confusion. In other states where we have seen this, let me back up just a little bit. You can still only vote for one. If you're unaffiliated, you could only vote on one side or the other side, the Republican side or the Democrat side. If you wanted to vote in the primary for U.S. Senate on the Republican side, and then in your congressional race wanted to vote for a primary in the Democrat side and did so, your ballot is spoiled and neither vote cast. They're thrown out. In other states where we have seen this, there's been as high as 12% of those unaffiliated ballots having to be thrown out. There's a number of those states that have redone their laws to try and fix those conflicts so that they can count ballots. According to the Blue Book, the anticipated rate would be about 7% in Colorado, and that's just a guess that they use based on the data that they came up with. That should bring some sort of concern if you're unaffiliated and don't understand, and you have 10%, 7 to 12% of the ballots thrown out, which could indeed change election results fairly easily. I am voting no on that one as well. I honestly believe that our grassroots system is a great system. And if you want to be involved, then you can be involved. And if you want to vote in a primary and you're unaffiliated, you can. All you have to do is show up to the poll, declare what party you want to vote in the primary, and then vote in that primary, and then go right back down and say, I would like to be removed and become an unaffiliated again. That's why I'm voting no on 107. The last one I will talk about is Proposition 108, which is primary elections again, but this has to do with all of the primaries, local, state, all of the elections in Colorado. It seeks to make Colorado's primary elections open to any registered voter rather than closed to registered party members. It's similar to Proposition 107, but it clarifies that if there is a primary, that it would indeed be open. Except, again, for minor parties. If you're one of those minor parties, you can't vote. You're not included. Only if you're unaffiliated. Here's one of the caveats that's in that one. And I would anticipate there will be a lot of discussion if this passes. There is a provision in there that says a major party may eliminate a primary and select their candidate through an assembly process only. I'm opposed to that as well. As I said, I think our grassroots system, where we meet in homes, we meet in garages, we meet in churches, those that want to be involved become involved. And I urge everybody to be more involved and try to find ways to get more people involved. That is why I'm a no on 108 as well. Leland, would you like me to take questions now, or shall we have Senator Brophy come up and talk about 71 and then open it up for questions altogether? Thank you.
Yeah.